Hello everyone. We're talking about polygonal walls here, and I first made a few videos about 5 months ago. They got a mixed reception. I said that the Inca polygonal walls, the pre-Inca walls, were poured type of concrete, a type of geopolymer. Some people said no, some people said yes. It was a mixed bag and there were lots of different responses, and I just want to demonstrate another technique they could have used, which was firing. They could have fired stones into shape. Now, I just want to present some evidence that you cannot fit stones together perfectly, especially hard volcanic stones. This is a wall in Melbourne. I photographed this about a month ago or 2 months ago. This is the Flagstaff Gardens, the oldest garden in Melbourne, and this wall is built by convicts who are essentially slave labour brought from England, and they were forced to work for certain middle-class families, and if they stepped out of line they took them to the jail for a flogging basically, and they had to work as slaves for about 7 years. They didn't have many rights. They weren't allowed to drink, they weren't allowed to go out at night, they had to return to their barracks or whatever. Now, if you look closely at this wall, it's kind of badly done really. This is what happens when you use slave labour, and there are huge gaps, you see, and this was only done, it's pushing 200 years now, but it wasn't done too long ago, and just huge gaps, and this is a very hard stone, similar to what the pre-Inca buildings are made of, and as you see, it ain't easy to put two stones together, even if you cut them in straight lines. So what about all those polygonal walls, which are all sorts of funny shapes? So, what technique did they use? Again, this is more of the wall, bits sticking out. The fact is, as soon as you lay a stone down, it's pretty hard to move. You sort of just give up and leave it there. Again, huge gaping gaps. You can't even cut it straight. I mean, try and cut a rock straight, perfect. You can't. It's so difficult. It wasn't invented until the early 19th century, and you need steam power to do it. Okay, so however they did it, it was done differently to how we would envisage it today, because we don't have geopolymer, I suppose. Now, this is how they did it, alchemy, basically. Now, this is Egypt, and this is a woman baking an Egyptian sort of puffed up round bread. And alchemy I think it would derive from baking. They would notice that a substance can absolutely transform. Alchemy comes from agriculture. Agriculture, they say, is 10,000 years old. Wrong. It's far older. I think it comes from the previous super civilization, and humans essentially unlocked the vault at the end of the Ice Age, and they released the seeds, and the agricultural produce was already there, according to legend. It was from the gods. The corn was from the gods, given by the gods. It was there from the earliest of times, and they're starting to realize that. It just keeps getting pushed further and further back in time. So agriculture is alchemy. Alchemy could be tens of thousands of years old. They would have noticed that bread can transform in the oven, beer can transform, it can transform from agriculture into a weird intoxicating drink, and this is alchemy. This is where alchemy comes from. It's transformation. And you look at the shape of the bread, in particular this Egyptian bread, because the Egyptians built polygonal stuff as well, and again, this is how they did it, and this is not dissimilar from a blast furnace, a primitive blast furnace as well. So they would have used it for baking bread, but also for making metal, you see, in ancient times. Again, it looks delicious, doesn't it? And you have these pillow-shaped, these huge pillow-shaped objects. These bricks, you see, they're almost like those pieces of bread. So did they actually say, okay, we've done it for bread, let's do it for stone? Why not? Let's make a formula, let's bake the stone. Did they bake these in place? I'm wondering if they poured them and baked them in place. I made a video suggesting these were bags, biodegradable bags. They filled them up. That's got a positive reaction, and some people thought no. A few commentators on YouTube have picked up on that, and they're supporting it. I had one comment the other day. A man said he left. He actually left a few cement bags in the rain, and you peel them off, and they actually look kind of like this. So yeah, there you go. This guy Robert Temple. This is a brilliant book, Egyptian Dawn. He talks about a slightly previous civilization to the Old Kingdom who built the pyramids, and he says he experiments with geopolymer. He's got his own company. I couldn't find any information, but he says the Egyptian stones are surely geopolymer because you can't put a razor blade between them, and the reason for that is they're poured. They're sort of glued together. Again, this is what you have in the Inca. They really are glued together. They really are. I mean, where are the separators? There's nothing there, you know. They would have been very thin if there were any. And then alchemy. This is a traditional image of alchemy. It's all about making gold, but actually it's more about transformation. It's about using the laws of nature to transform something using fire. Professor Davidovitz, a chemist, and he's essentially manufactured these pyramid blocks, and he says this is a dry mixture. That's what it looks like, and that's a wet mixture. In fact, that huge block in the previous video of that I made of Baalbek actually looks like a dry poured mixture. It's just an enormous block. It's just huge. And yeah, these do look like Egyptian rocks, and he's just made them. Yes, again, how do you do this without kind of pouring into place? I reckon if you built this in modern times, you would pour it. The problem is it's kind of metamorphic, so it's like no concrete we know, and it really is not concrete. It's a geopolymer concrete. So how did they do it? What's going on? It's a bit weird. I mean, it's a bit strange. They could have made it exact if they wanted. That's apparent. This is like a snake or something, some snake carved into it. These are images and things. These things point to stars and things and different constellations and so forth. But to transform a rock, to really transform it into something that looks like rock, a metamorphic rock, a hard rock, you could bake it. You could bake it with tremendous energy. I'm not sure how much energy it would take, but you could do it. You could. So, is this a type of enamel? These sort of pincushion-like effects. Are they a type of thing that's been smeared on somehow and then baked onto an existing older layer? Now, do you remember my video? Yeah, I kind of had a smoking gun to show that this was concrete, and I showed one of these stones, a cornerstone. The outer side had just flaked off, and you could just see the inside. Why did it just flake off? Was it a different consistency to the inner stone? Again, this is a brilliant book, Davidovitz, Morris, and they argue alchemy was made about 5000 BC or even earlier, and they provide some recipes if you want to make pyramid stones. Here, this is interesting. They don't always have to have been poured. Here there were clear separators if it was poured, otherwise it could have been carved. I guess it could have been. But then, how do you do it? That's the problem. How do you do it? That's a perfectly straight line. So there would have been a kind of separator there, I guess, because that's so perfect. It could have been cut. So we don't have to follow the same rule for every single wall. I mean, different walls could have been done differently because, let's face it, they do look different. Different polygonal walls do look very different from each other. And this is an alchemist working in his laboratory. Medieval alchemy, looking for gold, philosopher's stone, whatever. It was a mere shadow of what they could do in ancient times. Just a mere shadow. I mean, look at that. It's sort of all glooped together in a way. Some commentators have suggested these are sort of outlets, valves or something. I'm not sure. Who knows? Anyway, thanks for watching.